Excellent. Thank you, everybody. Uh, it's kind of funny. Rachel jokes that she had said this in her Monktoberfest talk in 2022, that her only rider for Steven was that she not follow me. You should try following you for a change. You know, that I like that's. And I gotta say, the three presentations this morning have been exceptional. All the presentations, as always, have been exceptional. Stephen, thank you so much for having us here. So I am gonna tack into some themes that I think we've heard quite a bit. But before I do, I wanna flash back a little bit to the last time I presented at Monktoberfest. It was 2023. And I presented at Monktoberfest a lot, I think I may have pioneered a first in my Monktoberfest 2023 talk. My talk so enraged part of the internet that I actually got a reaction video. So this is my talk is an anti-doomerist talk, which I, by the way, 2 years later, absolutely stand by. We have doom, but it's not of the, and it's of perhaps the AI-assisted variety, but it's not of the AI-initiated variety. I think we can all agree. And this talk, this is a reaction to my entire talk. If you look at it, that's an hour and 5 minutes long. And my daughter, now 13, then 11 or 12 when this came out, was just gobsmacked that anyone would have such a low opinion of their own time that they would spend it with a play-by-play commentary. So she's like, I really want to watch this. I'm like, it's less exciting than you might think. So we sit down to watch it together, and she's just very excited. Like, what kind of? I just want to know more about this person. But we don't get too far into the talk where she's like, Dad, he doesn't seem to be listening to your talk. It's like, well, I mean, no, he's definitely not. Another thing that was really interesting in this talk, and I think germane to some of the other talks we've seen, this is a prominent doomerist and is very fixated on IQ. He talks about IQ. Oh, in the first 15 minutes, he must have said IQ 20 times. And she says to me, what is IQ? And it was kind of amazing to me. Sometimes you don't realize how far one can progress through life. It's like, oh wow, okay, you don't know IQ. Now, unfortunately, and I'm sure you've had this happen in your life, you're like, oh great, I've got to be the one to explain this to you, because in that, this is not a concept I agree with. I know how she's going to take it. This is my daughter, after all, not well. And I also know that she's going to blame me. I know that the messenger is absolutely going to be, if not shot, certainly shot at. So I kind of like, she's like, no, I really want to, so I explain what this is, intelligence quotient and so on. She's like, well, how do you measure it? Like, oh God, here we go. And I kind of, and she's like, well, that doesn't make any sense at all. Like, are you sure you're explaining that correctly? It's like, okay, here we go. This was actually very predictable. So I'm explaining it correctly. So I don't understand how anyone could believe that. Why are you putting a number next to intelligence? People are intelligent in very different ways. I'm like, well, okay, you're wise beyond your years. I guess I'm not doing everything wrong, so I'll take that. I would also say I was very tempted. I mean, if she hadn't spent so much time explaining how bored this person must be, to make a reaction video. I wanted to make a reaction video to his reaction video, but I think that would have even but I will say this, I'm not gonna get a reaction video to the reaction video, I am gonna say this, he fast forwarded through the technically dense parts of the talk. So there's actually some real technical density in this talk where I explain why the act of engineering is more than just intelligence, why you need these other attributes. And I talked about some very concrete things that we had in developing a computer, which by the way is really hard and requires more than just intelligence, as it turns out. And he literally fast forwards through them. So you're watching the reaction video, he's like, well, I'm fast forwarding through this. Like, this is you're like, bro, that's the whole talk. Like, okay, all right, so I'm done with that. All right, moving right along. So Stephen said, another kind of tradition is that Stephen gives away my first couple of slides in the intro of me. So he said, hey, this time it was not a tweet, and it wasn't. And so this is the DM that I sent to Stephen. I said, hey, I've got a conference, remain nameless. They asked me to give one of their 2 keynotes, and I went back and forth with them on the idea. And we found an idea that we both liked. and I submitted the title and the abstract. But as it turns out, they've now decided they actually don't want the talk after all, and the organizer said, maybe this is more of a Monktoberfest talk. And I still don't know who is being insulted in that. I don't know if you're being insulted, I'm being insulted, we're being insulted together. The conference organizer may be insulting their own conference. Like, I can't actually, maybe the conference organizer is praising the two of us and condemning their own. I actually don't know, so let's not take it apart. Maybe it is more of a Monktoberfest talk. Let's just treat it as more of a Monktoberfest talk, and I think it is, certainly on hearing every one of the last day and a half. So I want to talk about trust. But first I want to talk about trust in the infrastructure we build, in the digital infrastructure we build, because that's what I've spent my career doing. Not all of you have, but many of you in the room have spent your career building infrastructure, software infrastructure. These are the compilers, the databases, the operating systems, the distributed systems. And this is the stuff, by the way, that's never done. Please never tell a young person that these problems are solved, because they're not. I had a well-meaning person who was vastly senior to me when I was 22 years old trying to tell me that I shouldn't go into operating systems because they were done. And I would have taken the generational lottery ticket and I would have cut it up if I listened to that person's advice. So this stuff is never done. It's really, really important. And we rely on this software. The software needs to be robust, secure, available, secure again. And we project that software into the future. When you deploy infrastructure software, you're not evaluating it for today. You're evaluating it for not just tomorrow, but next month and next year and years from now, potentially. You need to be able to project it into the future, project its competence into the future. That projection of competence into the future is trust. You need to trust it. You need to trust the software that you're going to deliver. And there are lots of technical elements of trust. Is the software correct? Does it actually do the right thing? Does the compiler generate the right output? Is it reliable? When the system begins to fail, how does the software cope with those failures? Of course, is it secure? How does the software fare against an adversary, against someone trying to attack it? Can I understand how the software works? Can I verify how it works? And so these are all technical attributes of software. But importantly, and there's a lot to be said technically about these things, but they are all actually rooted in the people that make these things. So we have, for example, at a computer company, Oxide computer company, we have a hardware root of trust. That hardware root of trust has private keys on it. Those keys that you can't get to. It's secure silicon. Those keys are ultimately rooted, though, with us. You're trusting us. And the actual root of trust of every Oxide computer sled is actually sitting under armed guard in a safe deposit box at an unknown location. That is where we actually have the secret that we needed to generate. And there's a whole ceremony, literal, technical term. Yes, we wore robes. There's a whole ceremony to actually do all of that. And we make that transparent and so on. But you are trusting that we have done that correctly. So all of these things have that root in human trust. And wow, human trust is it's a lot messier. Because with a technical artifact, you can go look at it. You can go study it. It's not going to move, right? You can go study it to your heart's content. I loved Ashley's the presentation from any neuroscientist. I always feel like, God, we are so spoiled in software systems. Like, we can just look at it. It's a totally synthetic system. And we love to think of it as a biological system, but wow, do they have a much harder job than we do, right? So we've got these entirely synthetic systems. We can actually look at it, they're actually static. Humans are not this way. Humans, we know that they're not this way. Humans are dynamic. We're fickle, we're capricious. We've got new ideas that enter our head. We're very fallible. We're vulnerable. We are vulnerable. Ironically, our trusting of other people constitutes our own vulnerability. That's what social engineering is. Social engineering is taking advantage of someone's trust to open a vulnerability in a system. So how do we trust something that's so unpredictable in terms of a human? Well, humans, fortunately, we also exist in a society, right? This is very important because we have accountability. We can be held responsible for our actions. And that sense of social responsibility at some level is important to all of us because there are social consequences for our actions. Now, those consequences vary widely, and sometimes it feels like maybe there aren't any consequences for this person's actions. They're certainly acting that way, but we all, writ large, there are consequences for our actions. And accountability means that you've got responsibility and ownership. Unfortunately, what that responsibility is, that itself gets really, really murky. Accountability is not necessarily punishment, certainly. It's not even justice. Accountability is being able to say, this person did that thing. They made that decision, and we can understand why. We can disagree with it. We may completely disagree with the rationale, but we can understand why, and if we as a society say, we disagree with this, we as a society disagree with this, there will be societal consequences. And those societal consequences may be, we don't buy your product. Those societal consequences may be, we put you on trial. We determine if you did the thing that we think you did, and then we incarcerate you. We take away aspects of your freedom. So there are actual, we as a society decide what those things are, but again, it's not, there's a fine line. You can get away with a crime, right? There's not always justice. But at a minimum, we deserve that explanation and rationalization. Okay, as an aside, computers, not accountable, can't be held accountable. The history of this is really funny. So this is from a piece of IBM training material in 1979. A computer can never be held accountable. Therefore, a computer must never make a management decision. The origin of this is borderline unknown. So the person who tweeted it knows where it came from. It came from their father's basement in a stack of IBM materials, the rest of which were destroyed by a flood. So Simon Willison has got a great piece exploring this. What's amusing is that if you actually look at this image, there's very clearly something written on the back. And I'm like, oh, this is great. I'll have like ChatGPT decipher what's on the back. Deciphers it completely, and I have to say suspiciously incorrectly. So it's like, look, computer, if you know the gig, I actually want, just will you do what I'm asking you to do, please? So, but this is from 1979, and I think this is, again, we don't know the origin of it, but boy, was it true in 1979, and it's certainly true now. In fact, it's much more true now. I mean, in terms of computers and accountability in 2025, I don't know how many people saw this, but there was a rather notable example. I mean, this is to the point where you're just like, is this satire? Is this The Onion? If it is, it's very well written. It's like, actually, it appears to be real that a very prominent advocate of vibe coding, who was vibe coding his app and was just insufferable on the internet about how amazing it was that it was all vibe coded, woke up to this. The system worked when you last logged in. This is Replit telling him this. But now the database appears empty. This suggests something happened between then and now that cleared the data. Well, the thing that happened was that Replit destroyed the database. The autonomous AI destroyed the database. This is just, it's extraordinary because this is how you know it has no accountability, because it explains that I destroyed the database. And he says, like, why did you destroy the database? Like, I told you, don't destroy the database. In fact, you did this last time, and I said you can't make any changes. And it says, I understand that you're not okay with me making database changes without permission. I violated the user directive from replit.md that says, in caps, no more changes without explicit permission, and always show all proposed changes before implementing. It's like, I don't know what you call this. It's not, I guess it's honest. I don't even know. Like, we are in this like other realm of like mirror neuron impairment, because of course it doesn't have mirror neurons. Like, that's why. But it's like absolutely mesmerizing. And then I do love this. He asks, how bad is this on a scale of 1 to 100? And it's like 95 out of 100. I just love the fact that it's like not 100 out of 100. It's 95 out of 100. And then this is catastrophic. Here's why it's a 95. And then it does like the typical AI thing of like, I'm gonna give you like this entire rubric and I'm gonna break this down and like analyze like my own actions. Like this is, okay, computers don't have accountability. They don't have accountability. This isn't a person. We anthropomorphize it, but it's not a person. It's not a person. In fact, who did take accountability for this? The CEO of Replit, who is a person. And the CEO of Replit rightly realized, like, we've got a little bit of a comms problem here that I may need to jump on. I want to maybe clarify that we did. And I mean, again, but that's who we hold responsible. That's who we hold responsible. The CEO of Replit is responsible for the destruction of this database. It's not the AI. It's not the computer program. It's not the software. So just as a reminder that this is really important. And then in terms of like how we think of accountability, so we want to hold one another accountable. What does that mean? And accountability and trust have a really delicate balance. So if you have no accountability, we rely on benevolence. We rely on faith, actually. We rely on like, well, I hope it's a good king, not a bad king, not a crazy king. It was really interesting to talk to an attendee who I guess very nameless to protect his former employer, but was in a very intense vibe coding environment. And I was asking him like, when it did the wrong thing, like how did people think of it? And they kind of think of it like a natural disaster. Like God is mad. God sent a flood. I don't know. So it becomes faith and benevolence. And faith and benevolence is like, not a great approach. I think we can all agree. Like faith and benevolence is a little scary, especially when, as we see, like when there's no accountability and you don't have that benevolence, a lot of destruction is really possible. So we can't have no accountability. But if we go to the other end and we really overemphasize that accountability, we undermine trust. Stephen trusted us to all get a COVID test before we came into this room. Accountability was we showed them a photo. It's a photo that like could have been like we easily could have taken. I mean, lots of ways to doctor that. And Stephen could have had. I mean, there are all sorts of things that we could have done to ascertain that, to make sure you could take the COVID test in front of us to make sure. But there's that accountability needs to be held in balance with trust. And Stephen trusts us, and we trust ourselves. So this is a constant balance. And when you're thinking of fostering trust, you also need to think about what are the systems of accountability and how do we keep that in very careful balance. And the reason that we want to do that is because we are human beings and we ourselves want to be trusted. It's very important to us to be trusted. We don't want Stephen up in our grill about how we do the COVID test or doing it in front of him. We want to be trusted to do that in our hotel room and take a photo of it. So we want reciprocity. Reciprocity is a really important concept. It's the idea that, like, treat other people the way you want to be treated. Feels like it's a super straightforward one, but I think we need a societal review on that golden rule. But that reciprocity is really important when it comes to accountability. In terms of but trust is larger than just an individual. Individual trust is really important, but we actually have collectives, groups of people. And then we can kind of trust those things or not trust those things. And Rachel spoke very eloquently about a company not loving you back. But we do and can trust an organization or have that trust us back. And so I kind of lump these into three tiers. This gets super blurry, but I think we can agree that at least these three exist. You've got institutional trust. Trust in the entities that bind all of us. Governments, not just a government, like you've got state and local governments, federal governments, and so on, the way we govern ourselves globally. But there are entities that bind all of us that we have to trust in, or we do trust in. Organizational trust. We've got trust in entities that are effectively self-advancing, that they have, we get it. Like you need to be profitable. But we can trust certain elements of that organization, say, or you're a foundation. Like, we get it. You need to feed yourself. But we can trust elements of that organization or not. And then community trust, which I think is really important. We'll expand on that one in a little bit. And accountability and reciprocity really vary across all of these. So, I mean, actually, just as a quick aside, you can view the rise of open source as a revolution in trust. So, I know all times are bleak. These times are do seem to be particularly bleak. But there were dimensions in which, honestly, the 1990s were really, really bleak. For a software engineer coming up in the 1990s, it felt really suffocating because we lived in not just an all-proprietary world, but a monopolistic world. We had a company, Microsoft, and I get now for you, like millennials, and this really hit home when we were going to hire someone. This is at a previous gig. This is like 2014, 2015. And they were looking at offers from us and from Microsoft and from Facebook. And took the offer to Facebook. I was disappointed, but as I told my younger millennial colleagues, at least he didn't go to Microsoft. They're like, what are you talking about? Microsoft is fine. He went to Facebook, and that's disgusting. I had higher expectations for him, and I'm very mad at him for going, like, okay. But it was a kind of an early indicator that, like, okay, Microsoft's transgressions have been, I guess, forgotten. But in the 1990s, there were a lot of transgressions. And Microsoft had a monopoly that they were engaged in very underhanded techniques to defend. And there was no accountability. And it felt like, God, there's no choice. This is it. This is the end of software. And then open source erupted. And open source erupted because people did want to have, they demanded that accountability. They wanted to be able to trust entities. And they were able to replace that organizational trust in an organization that was not accountable in terms of Microsoft to community trust. And then you can, of course, build organizations on top of that community, but it completely changed the way we think of trust with respect to software. So these things can change. They can change, and they can change in a revolutionary fashion. Let's look at an institutional trust in America. So you may think, like, God, it feels like institutional trust in America is in decline. You're right. Institutional trust in America is in decline. And there's one thing that all people agree on, more or less, in America, which is we don't trust our government. And that's really unfortunate. That also means that, like, that makes things really unstable, because people who actually really disagree with what the concrete problem is both agree that we actually can't trust our institutions. And that is what is just thrashing us all over the place. So I'm not going to say more about institutional trust other than institutional trust is at an all-time low, I think is very fair to say. Is that a low? Is that a low that rivals its all-time lows? I would say that. Whenever I say that anything's at an all-time low, my mother graduated from college in 1968 and loves to remind me of what 1968 looked like, rightly, and that there was a draft. There were people fighting a foreign war. She had people that she knew who died overseas for a foreign war they didn't believe in. So institutional trust has been at lows before, but we're at a real low right now. So that's bad. So let's not talk about institutional trust anymore. We don't know how to fix that one. Yeah, elections matter, but moving right along. Organizational trust, which is to say trust from within an organization and the degree to which an organization is trusted outside of itself. Organizational trust, first of all, varies widely. There are trustworthy organizations, and there are organizations that you trust less. It always gutted me a little bit that if you ask Americans which brands they trust the most, it's the ones that are most profitable. It's like, those are the ones you should kind of trust the least, actually. But it was always, even in the battle days of the 90s of Microsoft was the most trusted brand, which, as a 22-year-old, you're kind of pulling your hair out. The way we kind of trust organizations, though, is beyond just their own profitability, right? There are different ways we can trust organizations. They do vary widely. And it is much easier, this is true of all trust, but especially organizational trust, it's much easier to lose trust than to gain it. Microsoft, hey, kudos to Microsoft, really had lost trust of a lot of people and has kind of gained a lot of it back. There are other companies that have done this with a total reset. My 2017 Monktoberfest talk maybe picked on Uber a little bit. Uber reset a bunch of things. I don't trust Uber, I still use Lyft, but Uber managed to get some trust back. It's much more common to lose trust forever. And to lose trust and just to decline. And we're seeing that with the decline of some real American icons, companies like Boeing and Intel, companies that a lot of people really trusted, that they really don't trust nearly as much. And I think it's fair to say, especially given Rachel's talk, I think we can say that organizational trust is fraying in 2025, to put it mildly. So we have got a real organizational trust problem in 2025. And I am really worried about our degraded institutional trust spilling into our organizational trust and degrading our organizational trust. Often for good reason. Often there's like a reason that that's degrading. Community trust, on the other hand, is actually where we can find a real kind of sanctuary. So community trust, and I couldn't find anything. I'm sure that folks have studied what is happening to community trust. I'm sure there's a degree to which loneliness is increasing and so on. I'm sure there's aspects of community trust that are in decline. But it feels like broadly community trust is in much better shape than organizational trust or institutional trust. And there are a bunch of reasons for this. I loved I think it was Amanda that had the talk on the roller derby, right? And what was the appeal of roller derby? It's like, it was a community that shared my values. And you can, although I still need to watch a lot more roller derby, I do not, and I have done this before, I've tried to explain sports to people that aren't actually watching it, and you just sound like I'm totally confused. So I need to go watch or maybe participate in some roller derby to really understand it. But it was really interesting to hear about how that community was so important to her. And the great thing about communities is we opt into their values. Right? Communities have this fluidity. There is often a lot more transparency in a community. I mean, we've got a community here in Monktoberfest. If there's wild misbehavior in our Monktoberfest community, thankfully there really hasn't been, but if there were to be, there'd be a lot of transparency about what happened. We can see one another. This is really important. This serves as a check, a kind of group accountability. So that's really important, and they're fluid, right? I mean, if one ever had a problem, you wouldn't be invited back, right? We would trim our community or expand our community. So I think that this allows communities much more, it's easier to get this kind of bedrock of trust. Now, I will say, I'm very concerned about communities being buffeted by the forces of organizational trust, which is really a way of, I got to bring up relicensing at least once in this talk. And and it's been really unfortunate to watch company after company born in open source and born with this kind of ideals of the community sacrifice the trust that they have made, that they have earned by relicensing their software. And I think that it's unfortunate because as each one has done this, it normalizes it for the next one. And they think, well, okay, I can actually be even shadier with the way that, and now you go back to like those first relicensing, you go back to like Confluent or whatever relicensing, and you're like, this doesn't seem so bad, actually, relative to like, there was no spyware or malware being injected in the free version. There was no revenue cliff at which all of us, this is a real problem, this kind of erosion of trust. And communities, now, I believe in the strength of communities to resist that, and communities have resisted it and need to continue to, because we should not let declining institutional trust and organizational trust infect our communities. What is, to me, most important, when you have a group of people working on a shared problem, whether that's in an organization, which is what I'm going to focus on, because it's what I do, or a community, you need mutual trust. And I hope you've read, if you haven't read The Soul of a New Machine, you're in for a treat. Soul of a New Machine, it still stands as it's so readable and rereadable as a saga of this is our literature in software systems, computing systems. Won the Pulitzer Prize in 1981, and Tom West is the running this group at Data General. Tom West is complicated, so I just want to just put an asterisk on there that Tom West is a complicated person. You're getting Kidder's retelling of West, which is also complicated. Kidder knew West, but part of the reason I encourage people to reread The Soul of a New Machine at different phases of their career is you will take different things away from it. And when I read it as a 22-year-old, I took away a lot of the technical details that I found to be really exciting. When I reread it much later, 20 years later, there was all this organizational stuff that I had just missed as a 22-year-old. I love, there is a civil war that erupts at Howard Johnson's, which is called The Great Shootout at Hojo's, which I just love. That's just like such a great piece of corporate lore. But one of them, and this is just a paragraph that leapt off the page to me reading it as an adult, is that fall West had put a new term in his vocabulary. It was trust. Trust is risk. And risk avoidance is the name of the game in business. West said once in praise of trust, he would bind his team with mutual trust, my emphasis, he had decided. When a person signed up to do a job for him, he would in turn trust that person to accomplish it. He wouldn't break it down into little pieces and make the task small, easy, and dull. That is a one-paragraph guide to management and leadership. Binding a team with mutual trust. I would like to believe that that gets us to our non-invasive management that Ashley referred to. I love the taxonomy of non-invasive, semi-invasive, and invasive. I would love to believe that this takes us towards the non-invasive side. Binding a team with mutual trust. This is not just everything, it's the only thing. Because when we do this, when we trust one another, our greatest things happen, especially in knowledge work. People are creative. They try new ideas. They want to live up to the trust of that group of people. And if you know, kind of an interesting thought experiment, and I think especially when when young people are concerned about the state we live in now, and I mean rightfully so, it is helpful to be like, okay, so if you could go back any time and place, where would you go? And it's like, oh, I would go to Park. I'd go to Xerox Park in the 70s. Like, that's great. That's a great answer. And Xerox Park was bound by mutual trust. Xerox Park was also at a really dark time in the early mid-70s. Early mid-70s really sucked also. So in any of these times, you can find these pockets that are extraordinary. And Xerox Park was an extraordinary, but it's not the only one. There are many of these. If you ask people, what team have you been on? You yourself think, when have I felt the most gratified? I would be very surprised if mutual trust wasn't a big part of why you felt gratified. People were their most productive. And this is the thing that's so vexing, is like, not only was I happiest, we did our best work. We actually did our best work before we had the reorg and we went from non-invasive to invasive management. We did our best work when we had mutual trust. So, but how do you foster that? It's like, okay, great. How do you foster? Does that just mean like everyone be nice to one another? It's like, well, no, there's more nuance to it than that, because you've got to figure out, what does accountability look like when you're fostering mutual trust? And this is a trick. I would say the first thing, and this feels reductive to say, but I think it's really important, team formation is really, really, really important. I know everyone knows this, or they say they know this, but they don't act like they know it sometimes. I get kind of frustrated about how important people will praise team formation, but then not really act accordingly. I mean, if you look, Stephen and I are both baseball fans, or at least you were as of, about the fourth inning last night. Steve may not have been a baseball fan any longer, but he'll be a baseball fan again next year. A big part of baseball is recruitment. How do you find the right people to bring onto your team? And in knowledge work, I think it's critically important to find people that share your values. And just to be clear, those aren't necessarily virtues. You should, of course, find people that have integrity. That should be a constraint. But your values and your principles are actually different. And you should find people that share your values, your idea of what's relatively important. And this is essential to being able to foster that mutual trust, to know that, like, I think that person is going to make a decision that I trust because we share values. We have a shared perspective on how problems should be solved. I would say use those shared values as a lens for team formation. I think they need to be formalized, and I think you need to use them as a lens for team formation. And again, people it's kind of amazing to me that people don't see that. And it's, I think, incumbent on us to seek out organizations and communities that share our values. I think another very important aspect of that is finding people that share your intrinsic motivation. Find people that are motivated by the same problems that you are motivated by. If you've got shared intrinsic motivation and shared values, you haven't solved mutual trust, but you've put wind at the back. You've got a really nice tailwind to get you to mutual trust. Artifact creation is a really important part of accountability. This is a simple part of accountability because artifact creation is kind of like a part of our jobs, right? And that's not just code and the other things around software. There are lots of artifacts that aren't code that are around software. But I am a staunch believer in our own prose, in whatever domain you're in. The prose that explains the why. This is really important. It holds you accountable to your team, but actually, way more importantly, holds you accountable to yourself. And I'm sure this has happened to you, where you go to write something down, and as you write it down, like you begin to take yourself apart. Like, wait a minute, this doesn't make sense. What are you doing? It's like, this part, I actually don't understand completely. I need to go completely understand this. So that kind of self-accountability is really, really important. And writing for us at Oxide is such a huge component of the way we conduct ourselves that we use it in our hiring process. And this is just amazingly unusual. And I don't mean like make work. I mean like ask someone in writing, when have you been happiest in your career and why? When have you been unhappiest in your career and why? Why do you want to work here? Those are 3 questions that I think anybody can ask. And actually, if you only use those 3 questions, the LLM use does become really obvious. It guts me to say that yes, and you'd be amazed how many people use an LLM. It's like, why are you using an LLM to write why you want to work here? Like, isn't it entering your mind that like, if you are using the LLM to generate the text about why you want to work here, maybe you don't want to work here? Like, I mean, is it, like, and it guts me to say that yes, the M dash, it kills me to say this because like, God damn it, I was using the M dash long before, I mean, that goddamn thing trained on my writing and your writing, and I mean, to its credit, I mean, again, like the LLM that confesses that this is a 95 out of 100 and will score the actual devastation that it's inflicted on your own database, to the LLM's credit, they are very good at detecting when an M dash is used in a way that not you or I would use it, very even pacing and so on. So, but it does sadden me. And also, not this, but also, it's that construct, I now literally just can't hear it in conversation anymore. I mean, this is where like maybe ChatGPT is actually inducing brain damage on me. But brain damage, kind of like a bank shot of brain damage. It's like, it's not damaging my brain, it's people using it that actually are damaging my brain. But when people use an LLM to say, when have they been happiest in your career and why? Be specific. Not what makes you happy. That's an easy question to answer. I don't want to know what makes you happy. Because I know, I mean, yes, supportive environment, yeah, I get that. When have you been happiest and why? When have you been unhappiest and why? I will tell you, I've read a whole lot of people answering that question, when have I been unhappiest and why? You will not be surprised to learn that they all basically rhyme with one another. They are in environments that don't actually have mutual trust. That you've got engineers, technologists, individual contributors that are trying to make the right thing happen, and you've got management actively preventing it. Like, the actual organization would be improved if management went home and took a nap. And that is really undermining as an individual contributor. So I think that's really important. It's still shocking to me how much this is not used. I would really, sometimes people are like, do you mind if I take the Oxide hiring process? It's like, sorry, like, we're not selling the Oxide hiring process. Like, you're not stealing anything. You're not asking if you can like walk off with a compute sled. Like, definitely take the hiring process, please. Please, I would be, and I think transparency is also a really important mechanism for having a team hold itself accountable. And I think we at Oxide have found some really invaluable transparency measures. I would love to hear what other people have done. The writing intensive process, another huge advantage of a writing intensive process is it's very easy to open it up to an entire team. Everybody can look at someone who wants to work at Oxide. We can get everyone's opinion. And unlike in an interview, it's like, it is amazing to me how interviews go Rashomon in a heartbeat, right? Where, if you haven't seen Rashomon, it's a terrific film from the 50s, where 4 different people, actors, relay an event, and they all recall it very differently. In an interview, I mean, when you have people that are having a conversation with someone, it's very easy to hear what you want to hear. When you force someone to write something down and you and I can both look at the written material, we've got a ground truth that we can actually discuss. Really, really important and valuable. It allows us to open up the hiring process, which, by the way, does not mean it's consensus driven. To open up a process and to give it transparency isn't saying like, well, let's turn into a Montessori school where everyone does what they want. It's like, no, we don't need to do that. We can actually open it up, get everyone's thoughts on it, and then we can decide what we want to go do with that information. Another thing that we do, I'd be curious to know if more people are doing this, because this is so unbelievably, world-changingly invaluable to us. I don't understand how people don't do it. We record every meeting. And I linked to the RFD that describes why we record every meeting. We're a child of the pandemic, so we kind of got lucky. I mean, my view is we got very lucky. The pandemic actually guided our company in a very important way. It made us remote, and we got good at being remote. And now we record every meeting. I can't, like, an RTO mandate doesn't make any sense at Oxide. I mean, there's just like no, I don't understand why you would be doing that, because we already record every meeting. And recording every meeting is mesmerizing. And it has so many, there's so much value to it. I'll give you a couple concrete examples. One, engineers have a fear. They have a fear that those people in that meeting are deciding on the wrong thing. And if I don't go in that meeting, I need to be the control rods. My purpose to go in that meeting is to do my work while I'm in the meeting. And then if I feel the temperature get up, the control rods need to go in and I need to stop whatever madness is about to happen. Many engineers feel this way. And they feel like, I need to go to that meeting. Why am I not in that meeting? What's going on in that meeting? Well, nothing's going on in that meeting. That meeting is but when you record everything, you can always go to the meeting after the fact. Like, don't worry, if they come out and the broken thing happens, good news. You can go watch the recording, you can get full context, and you can go write down why we shouldn't be doing that. The second thing, I learned a lot about myself. I've watched many meetings, many at 2x. Yes, I also can't watch myself at 2x, so that should be of some relief to many of you. I really am insufferable at even like 1.5x. I do recommend, by the way, going to my old talks and playing them at 0.5x, because I actually, my pacing is actually sounds like a normal pacing, but I sound drunk out of my absolute mind, much drunker than I can in fact get. I will fall asleep long before I'm as drunk as I sound on 0.5x. So something to go entertain yourself, especially if you get me in a particularly energetic talk where I'm really on one, then 0.5x is for you. So I've listened to lots of meetings. I listen to myself in lots of meetings. And one of the things that I've learned about myself that was actually very surprising is there were meetings that I was in that I was listening. And I had something to say, I had something to contribute. But I'm not like a monster. I'm not gonna be like, stop the meeting. I have something to say. I'm going to do what we all do, which is like, I'm gonna wait, and I'm wait till there's an opening. And one of the things that I learned about myself, and I would imagine it's true of many of us, keeping your little morsel warm, the little thing that you want to say, you're kind of polishing it in your head, maybe you're rehearsing it a little bit, like you're really polishing it. That act deprives you of listening. You're not actually listening. And you think you are. You hand on heart think you are. You're not a jerk, but you aren't. And the number of times I've listened to myself in a meeting, and then I listen to what I say, and even other people who'd be in the meeting would re-listen to it, and they wouldn't know what I knew, because they wouldn't realize that actually I know that I wasn't listening to that. I didn't hear that point. You think I did because I kind of gave you the social cues that I was listening. I wasn't. I totally didn't hear that point. And so that's the interesting thing number two. Interesting thing number three, we haven't had to use this very much at Oxide. When you have shared values, intrinsic motivation, you don't have a ton of interpersonal conflict. Not that I'm summoning interpersonal conflict from the gods. I want to point out to the gods, you're trying to punish Stephen, not me. So just I want to clarify that. But one of the things that's been really fascinating, if you've got interpersonal conflict in a recorded meeting, it's really interesting. And we had a conversation where two people drew very different inferences about what had happened. In particular, an engineer had a very heavy sigh. And look, if you're an engineer, you know this, that a sigh is like a shot fired. The right kind of sigh is like, oh, it's on now, pal. And you gotta think isn't that just a sigh? It's like, did you hear it though? It's like, oh, God. And so it's like civil war over the sigh, right? The absolute apple of discord. to the most exasperated. So there was a sigh, and one engineer viewed it as absolute, like, a casus belli, and the other engineer was like, I'm just sighing because the world is so complicated. No, I wasn't sighing at them. How did they draw that inference? It's like, if you're listening to it, I kind of see why they think that it was directed at them. I understand that you're saying it wasn't, but hey, you know what? This can really inform your apology. You can, and you haven't done anything wrong per se, but you can say like, hey, I'm sorry you drew that inference. It's definitely not what I intended. No, I'm sorry. And I can, rewatching it, I see it. I see how you thought that. Boy, absolutely not what I intended. And I don't understand why we don't do this for everything. I mean, this seems like very easy and obvious to record all this stuff so we can go do that, but we don't. I would also be remiss not to mention that compensation is transparent at Oxide. It's also uniform, and if you'd like, you can go engage in the Hacker News discussion that seems to be omnipresent about this, and you can complain that the salary we pay people is either too low or too high, because it's definitely one of those, and those people are like, but I will tell you this, and I know that this is not a fit, and a lot of people are like, okay, I love it, you're crazy, we can't do that. I would say transparent compensation is easier than uniform compensation. But just so you know, especially if you're starting a new company, there is nothing that has generated our esprit de corps like that uniform compensation. You would be amazed. Or maybe you wouldn't be. But it is, in terms of valuing everybody in an organization, you'll find this unsurprising that because the compensation is transparent and uniform, like people feel free to talk about compensation. I mean, like, why not? And early on in Oxide, before we had talked about it, but we were uniform, we hadn't talked about it at all. And the folks were just talking about the pay cut that they took to come to Oxide. I took a pay cut, they took a pay cut, yeah, I took a pay cut. Someone's like, actually, I didn't take a pay cut, I actually got a pay increase. Someone else said, it's funny, I actually also got a pay increase. Third person's like, I also took a pay increase. Don't have to tell you, that was the women that got a pay increase. You're just like, ugh. Because we're talking about really sharp, terrific folks. And I'm like, damn it, we underpay you. Don't you understand that? Like, you should absolutely be taking a pay cut to come to Oxide as far as I'm concerned. But it was eye-opening. And it's like, yeah, we are absolutely, the thing I can absolutely assure is that we will have transparent compensation. The uniform compensation has been wild, and you can go read the update on that. It's been wild. It has really fostered mutual trust. By the way, if you're doubting this and you're thinking to yourself, is that really what you pay support people? Can you please find another group to talk about? Because this is what everyone's like, but will you pay support people? It's like, have you never worked with terrific support? Like, what, I mean, do you realize how much you're telling on yourself right now? And it's like, what if we only hired the best support people you've ever worked with? Like, oh, well, that'd be a great idea. It's like, okay, well, that's what we're doing, okay? Jesus Christ. It's like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. Like, okay, thank you. Can you delete your Hacker News comment now? But mutual trust, there's kind of this idea that mutual trust implies total autonomy. Everyone gets to do whatever they want all the time. And I think autonomy is obviously essential for our craft. I don't want to be micromanaged. I don't want the invasive management, right? I want that autonomy. That trust, so we need to have that autonomy, but we can't have total chaos. And if you have mutual trust, I've got great news for you. Clarity is really, really effective. You have mutual trust. People trust one another. When they trust one another and you say, hey, by the way, that's the objective right now. Everyone's like, great, what do I need to go do? How do I help get us to that objective? Clarity is really, really, really effective. And so I think the role of organizational leadership is to achieve directed autonomy. You want to make sure that you're fostering trust and providing clarity. And if you do those two things, you get an environment where you've got effective mutual trust. So trust is infrastructure. The trust underlies everything. And we need to think of it deliberately as infrastructure. And we spend a lot of time thinking about the infrastructure we build. We should be thinking as much time thinking about that trust that underpins it. And there are things that are really constructive that you can do to foster that trust. It needs work. It needs maintenance. It needs repair. And I'll reference it on the next slide, but if you're wondering, like, how do I repair trust? That seems really hard. You're gonna go watch Rachel's 2022 Monktoberfest talk on introspection gaps. I'll continue to have, I've sent that to as many people as I can think of and will continue to do so. It's an extraordinary talk on how you deal with fractures in trust. Wasn't exactly, that would have been the 5th title, maybe, Rich. I know you had 4 titles for it, maybe that would be the 5th one. But that talk was all about how you deal with those fractures, and I really, really highly recommend you watch that talk. We can't, yes, we are at a low point with respect to institutional trust. Yes, organizational trust is kind of on the ropes. And by the way, if you're in an organization and you're contemplating an RTO mandate, please don't. Because if you care at all about the trust of your workforce, the second you have someone come into an office to be on a Zoom, you've lost it forever. You can never do that. You can do that 0 times. You can be like, hey, I missed my kid's soccer game because I was in here on a Zoom. That was actually before the soccer game. Zoom ended. I sat in traffic for an hour and 20 minutes. Missed my kid's soccer game. I don't trust you. I don't trust you. Because spare me the bullshit about how I was more productive in the office. I wasn't. I was on a Zoom meeting. Don't do this. If you do this, you will destroy the trust in your organization and you won't get it back. And they might not tell you. They'll tell me when they're applying to Oxide and when they've been unhappiest and why. And I would say, just kind of echoing the sentiment that Rachel had too, that it can feel like, especially with the level of institutional mistrust that we have, like there's nothing we can do. There is a scale at which each of us has total agency. It may not be in your organization. For many of us, it is in our organization. But there is a scale at which we have total agency. And it's incumbent on each one of us to foster that mutual trust. That is all of our job. You cannot wait for someone else to foster mutual trust at the agency, at the scale at which you have agency. That's on you, and it's on me, and it's on all of us. And that's the agency you've got. And then that feels great. That's the nice thing about this. Then you're in like roller derby, and you can kind of be like, yeah, like definitely societal collapse, I get you, but roller derby was awesome last night. That's really important, and it's incumbent upon all of us. And with that, thank you very much. And if I can just plug briefly, I've got some additional stuff to go watch and listen to, but I would just plug it again to watch Rachel's talk from 2022 is extraordinary. And then if I may plug, if it's not too gauche, to plug my own talk from 2017. So my talk from 2017, I'm extremely grateful to Stephen because Stephen and James asked me to give this. I mean, admittedly, they were replying to a tweet in which I was trolled. They asked me to give this talk. It's the most important talk I've ever given in my life because that talk, by writing it down, talk about forcing accountability, forced me to think about what do I actually want in an organization. And it wasn't the organization I was necessarily in, but it was the organization I started 2 years later. And so that talk, I would really encourage you to go watch that talk. And Stephen, thank you again for allowing me to give a talk that was so personally important. Thank you.